Therefore, I repeat, evacuate City 17 at once, if not sooner. I cannot state this without enough undue emphasis.
This could be it, Gordon. More of them coming.
This is another key vista, this time showing the core. It's a visual payoff for the player's success in getting here, and simultaneously, a way to present the player with a view of the next challenge.
It looks like they were deliberately trying to blow the reactor. But why? Oh my god. It looks pretty far gone. I hope Dr. Kleiner was right about this. Let's see if we can find a way through the control room.
Creating a believable, interesting relationship between Gordon and Alex is made a lot tougher by the fact that Gordon never talks. This elevator scene presented a nice little opportunity to have Alex express some emotion in a situation where Gordon isn't really in a position to respond.
These readings are off the chart. I hope it's not too late to re-engage the containment field. Good thing you know what you're doing. Well, here's your elevator. Gordon, I wish there was something else I could do to help. Hurry back.
The core design posed a lot of difficult challenges. Generally speaking, if the gameplay in a particular map isn't working, we can simply cut the entire area. This wasn't true of the core, because we knew it was critical to the story. On top of that, designing Citadel gameplay is often a bigger challenge than working out areas in City 17, largely because Citadel levels have a narrow set of gameplay tools. There are less enemy types available, and the player is usually only armed with the gravity gun. Because of this, we had to go through many iterations of the core design. One of the earlier prototypes was a kind of futuristic version of Operation, where players had to use the gravity gun to cleanly manipulate rods into slots in the core. That didn't work, partly because playtesters found that their view was obstructed by the rods, which made it frustratingly difficult to manipulate them with any kind of precision. We prototyped, playtested, and abandoned several other designs until we finally arrived at one that was fun, while still being challenging enough to give players the sense that they'd accomplished a significant goal.
The difference between skill levels isn't just a matter of damage dealt and received. For instance, in easy mode, we increase the length of time a Combine ball survives before exploding, putting less pressure on the player to get the ball into a socket.
ball tubes are an example of us working within our available toolkit to create a puzzle around the recognition concept. As a physical navigation puzzle, it's different from what the player has experienced before, and it's challenging while not being a binary succeed or fail situation. There are a number of ways to approach this puzzle. In addition to simply dodging, jumping, or ducking the balls, the player can grab or deflect them with his gravity gun, or pick up the hatch and use it as a shield to block the incoming barrage.
The Combine core was another new space that needed to stand out from the rest of the environment. We wanted the core to look hot and dangerous, but still be distinct from the fires and the cool blues of the rest of the Citadel. The core became the primary light source in this space, and in conjunction with the white set of Combine materials, we created an extreme contrast to the normally dark values of the Citadel metals.
The core sphere was one of the last special effects that we finished. To achieve this effect, the core uses animated textures, flow maps, normal map refraction and specularity, as well as volumetric particulate matter rendering, which takes advantage of the core being a sphere.
The higher contrast white Combine motif of the core sets it apart from the rest of the Citadel and heightens its importance within the visual style of Combine aesthetics. It also helps enhance the perception of heat and radiation in the space.
The core was a central element of this part of the game, and as much as possible, we wanted to constantly reinforce its importance. Zigzagging through the space in 3 dimensions while navigating a variety of challenges let us present a few different visual and gameplay perspectives on the same space. By letting the player see the core from a bunch of different angles, we were able to give them a real sense of its scale.
The second ball tube presents a variation of the pattern the player learned in the first ball tube. While the first tube can be crossed slowly, by crouching and maneuvering your way up, the second ratchets up the pace, requiring a quicker, more responsive approach. The goal of this logic puzzle isn't figuring out that you need to put balls in batteries. It's coming to the realization that, by filling all of them, you've denied yourself an exit, and that you have to desocket one, climb on the lift, and then resocket it. Sparks guide the player to the source of the balls, which happens to be the tube they just passed through.
Monitor scenes, such as this video transmission from Dr. Mossman, aren't simply pre-rendered video. These scenes actually unfold live in an inaccessible section of the map, while being projected onto the monitor screen. Here's Dr. Mossman in the small Arctic base set. It's not nearly as far away from the Citadel's core control room as it appears to be in the level.
You did it! The containment system's back in place. It won't last forever, but at least we bought a little time. While you were in there, I did some poking around in the control data. They were trying to start a chain reaction, all right, but destroying the Citadel is just a side effect. Since we took out Breen's reactor, this is the only way they have to send a transmission packet back to wherever they came from. I can't tell what the packet contains, but it's important enough that they're willing to sacrifice the whole Citadel to send it off. We need to get it back to my dad and Dr. Kleiner at the outpost right away. I've been pulling down a copy. Whatever it is, I have a feeling it's bad news for all of us. There's something else. It's Judith. Take a look.
I'm fairly sure I've pinned down the location of the project. It's hard to say how much of it might have survived intact, or whether there's anything remaining that could compromise our work, if it were discovered by the Combine. We'll need to take a close look at it, of course, but I should be able to give a better opinion within a few hours. If the site is where we think it is, then it should be no more than... I'm gonna cut this short. We may have been spotted.
Where the hell is she? She's in serious trouble. We need to get this and the transmission packet to my dad. He'll know what to do with it. The packet's done copying. I've got it right here. Now let's get the hell out of here. Uh-oh. I think they felt that. I've secured an exit elevator. It's this way. Come on. Something tells me they don't want us reading their mail. This lift will take us to a train platform. If we can hitch a ride, it should take us straight out of the city. Hey, the gravity gun's back to normal. Well, it was nice while it lasted.
Usually, the second step of our training arcs involve a threatening training area. This is the second step in the roller mine training, and true to form, there's the threat. The indestructible roller mines endlessly attack the player in a gated space. The only way to defeat them is to have Alex convert them, which means there's no way the player can miss the point of the training.
Bring that over here.
Players also like to see the AI characters fight each other. So after reminding the player about Alex's roller mine hacking talent, we let you sick them on a pack of Combine soldiers.
They won't be expecting this. Look at him go! This is our train. Let's get in. Come on, let's get in.
In much the same way that movie effects often utilize different versions of the same model, there are actually three trains that make up the Stalker scene. The first one is the moving train you see arrive at the platform. The one you're in right now is a static interior with lights moving outside of it to give the illusion of motion. The third train is the crash version. It's a tilted, banged up, and totally separate area from the moving version. The transition from moving to crashed is disguised by a brief fade to black.
Alex's reaction to the Stalkers went through a number of iterations. In very early versions, Alex was frightened by the Stalkers. That didn't work because it didn't fit with Alex's earlier reactions to Stalkers in the Citadel. We changed it so that she expressed anger at the Stalker's predicament. Early versions of this new direction failed because Alex's transition from generally upbeat to blind rage was simply too abrupt. Ultimately, through rewrites and rigorous testing, we found the right tone for the scene, a simmering anger level that was more in tune with the situation.
Looks like you saved our lives again. What's that? Oh my god. Brace yourself!
We wanted the crash train car to be very disorienting. In early tests, though, players felt that it was too confusing and too hard to navigate. That feedback prompted us to tone it down a bit. By rearranging some of the geometry, we were able to create a banged-up, tilted environment that still offered a relatively unobstructed path.
Thank you.
This is another multi-purpose scene. First, Alex is visibly shaken, which once again humanizes her. But she also states the player's goal for the second half of the game: climb to the surface and get to the train station.
Okay. Well, this might not be as easy as I thought. We're in the same boat as the other evacuees now. On foot to a train station. Let's head for the surface. see a thing. I'm blind as a bat without that flashlight on. We need to get through that door. Damn, it's like a powered lock. How are we gonna get this open? Let's see if we can find a power box.
Hey, an air duct.
I've heard stories about you and air ducts. Dr. Kleiner says whenever he locked himself out of his office, you and Barney used to compete to... Can't see a thing. I'm blind as a bat without that flashlight on. We need to get through that door.
Hey, an air duct.
I've heard stories about you and air ducts. Dr. Kleiner says whenever he locked himself out of his office, you and Barney used to compete to see who could get in fastest without using a key.
Before we armed players with traditional weapons, we wanted to give them a chance to appreciate Alex's combat abilities. Toward that goal, we created a very specific combat style for the early parts of the journey outside the Citadel. Dark, tense, surrounded by zombies, and either weaponless or starved for ammo, so that players needed to rely on the gravity gun, and more importantly, Alex. This is where players finally get a weapon. Since the door only opens when the padlock is shot, players can't proceed without finding the pistol. It's effectively a weapon gate. Once players are through the door, we can be sure they've got a pistol.
Originally, the player couldn't operate the power boxes, and would have to wait for Alex to do it. We thought it'd be entertaining to watch Alex do some cool thing while you protected her. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Playtesters were more annoyed than entertained. The other problem was that having Alex committed to a particular activity while action was still going on in the world tended to quickly expose her most robotic tendencies. She'd either ignore what was going on, or completely stop whatever activity the player was waiting for her to finish. Either way, it was unconvincing and frustrating. What we learned here was that whenever Alex commits to some action in a dynamic environment, she needs to finish it quickly and move on.
The darkness in this area has a few real gameplay benefits. It slows the player down, which most of the time keeps Alex at your side. Claustrophobia, the close-in combat, and Alex's constant presence and reliance on your flashlight help enhance the tension and your sense of camaraderie. In the dark, the limited flashlight battery adds an extra layer of resource management to the tactics of combat.
Initially, the player wasn't going to have a weapon here. The combination of no weapon and near total darkness forced the player to use the flashlight to direct Alex's fire. We liked the idea that you could interact with Alex in a meaningful way, using elements that were already built into the interface. Unfortunately, playtesters didn't like not having a weapon, so we added weapons back in. Luckily, it turned out that, even armed, players tended to still use and enjoy the flashlight mechanic.
If you don't like Alex, you're not going to have much fun with episode 1, so Alex being likable was one of our most crucial design goals. Little moments like the Zombine joke are designed to make Alex more endearing. Since we like to multitask, it also had the practical purpose of introducing a new monster. The success of the scene relied on a combination of dialogue, voice acting, and animation. Surprisingly, lighting was really important too. Under red light, Alex's self-deprecating groan looked more like she was sneering at the player for not getting the joke. Changing the lighting to blue and then adjusting the direction of the light so that it changed the shadows on her face fixed the problem.
It's important that monsters get very deliberate introductions, since players are going to interact with them a lot. Generally, we let the player first see a new monster in a safe environment, so they can start thinking about it before they have to fight it.
hell is that? A Combine zombie. That's like a zombine, right? Zombine, get it? Okay. Crap! Look out! It's got a grenade!
The soundtrack here was created for the introduction of a new adversary, the Combine Zombie, or Zombine. Discordant guitar tones and bends and a lo-fi fast beat work in the background of this encounter to create an off-balance and disturbing mood.
We always try to exploit a feature as much as possible throughout a game. For instance, these flares. They're an exploration reward, they've got a simple, satisfying interaction with the gravity gun, and they're a good tactical alternative to the flashlight. Finally, they're a weapon that will ignite zombies, which in turn become a new light source.
For Episode 1, we implemented a scripting component called the Response Rules System for dynamically managing NPC speech. We wanted to take NPC speech out of the hands of the programmers and let the writers control it. The writers were able to set up a wide range of situationally triggered character responses. For instance, Alex has different reactions to different enemies, can warn the player of danger, calls for help when she's mobbed, and will ask for light. The combat responses worked out great, but it's especially satisfying when Alex's comments on some situation mirror your own thoughts. The writers really went crazy with this, so be on the lookout for lots of little Easter egg responses to unusual situations.
Poison headcrabs are ideal for ambushes, because they startle you but can't actually kill you. Here, after a series of right-hand turns, you round a corner into a dead end. While you're cracking open a box of goodies, you're ambushed by poison headcrab. Constructing the ambush this way increased the odds that you wouldn't see the crab, but you would hear it just in time to turn around as it leapt at your head.
The Antlion Hole training is unusual because it requires the player to learn a new skill in combat. This is a rare case where training occurs under duress, so Alex states the problem and helps in the fight, without giving away the solution.
You fight alongside Alex for much of episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her into some kind of convincing physical contact with her enemies. We'd always wanted to do this kind of dynamic character interactions, but getting the NPCs into position for their interactions has a pretty wide-ranging set of problems. So we ended up taking an opportunistic approach for episode 1, where instead of figuring out how to maneuver characters into proximity, the system monitors their positions and fires the appropriate animations whenever it notices that they're correctly aligned. Given how well these interactions worked out between Alex and zombies, headcrabs and antlions, we're really looking forward to extending this kind of behavior to all of our NPCs.
This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion burrow training pays off. Because we've taught the player the burrow blocking mechanic earlier in a less hectic environment, the problem here becomes not what to do with the burrows, but where to find the cars to block them while fighting off a horde of antlions. The burrows themselves went through several iterations. At first, playtesters had a hard time seeing them, and once they'd push the car onto one, they often weren't sure if the hole was actually sealed. We eventually solved both of these problems by adding a particle effect to the burrows. This effect makes them recognizable even at a distance, and its absence is a clear indication that the burrow is blocked.
We generally design and prototype the basic gameplay in a level before we apply much art to it. Throughout the first several months of playtesting this garage map, the geometry was nothing more than basic shapes and textures. After we finalized most of the gameplay elements, we began to flesh out the visuals for the area. For this level, we left the office and took reference pictures of various garages. From these shots, we pulled out everything we liked and that we thought we could pull off well. We combined these visual highlights into what we call a style guide map, which is a standalone map with no gameplay that we use strictly as visual reference. For this level, we actually made 2 style guides, one a destroyed garage, the other intact. After the look was established, we brought the playable map's visual quality up to the level of the style guides. Often a map's geometry needs to be changed as the art goes in because areas that worked in the abstract version no longer make sense in a map that now looks like a real place. For instance, the side rooms where 2 of the cars are hidden were moved several times in order to make them feel more naturally part of the parking garage.
You got a hazard suit. This water's nasty. Got one for 2 in there?
Episode 1 is our first project to use HDR lighting heavily in dark indoor environments. The interaction between the flashlight and the auto exposure calculations done for HDR presented a real technical challenge.
I don't believe it.
In dark areas where the flashlight was the only source of illumination, we found that we'd often end up with grossly overexposed views. We ended up compensating for this by using a different set of exposure parameters when the flashlight was turned on. In particular, we drastically shrunk the region of the screen examined for exposure calculations, which permitted us to concentrate only on the much smaller area lit by the flashlight.
This area is the dramatic culmination of all the lightless combat that comes before it. We wanted to create a dynamic fight that lasted several minutes while you waited for the elevator to arrive. The first iteration of this battle was very different from what we eventually shipped. The space was larger, had water in it, and wasn't completely dark. Water is relatively expensive performance-wise, so we cut that in favor of more zombies. We made the level smaller to ensure that the player would see the elevator and recognize the problem that needed to be solved before the fight started. We killed the lights both to enhance tension and to make the scene a final test of the dark fighting skills that the player develops over the course of the episode. Finally, we added a wire running along the ceiling from the elevator to the power box to give players a guide as they familiarize themselves with the area.
In early versions of the episode, Alex was much more vocal about giving the player hints. However, playtest showed it was much more satisfying for the players when Alex stated a goal and then stepped aside until that goal was accomplished. Because of that feedback, almost all of Alex's hint lines were cut. Eventually, though, we discovered through more playtesting that although players didn't like having Alex hand them unsolicited hints, they did want to be able to explicitly request help from her. So we added some of the hint dialogue back in, but it's only accessible at the player's request by Plus using Alex. Unfortunately, we learned these hint lessons late in the development cycle and didn't have time to properly train players for this feature. We plan to integrate the hint-on-demand dialogue more thoroughly in future episodes.
Our art and gameplay standards encourage players to build a visual dictionary that defines how they expect things to work in the Half-Life world. For instance, even though the door to the power box room is metal, and would probably have a metal crossbar holding it shut, we barred it with a wooden plank. Because we've been consistent throughout the game, the player should recognize that a wooden plank can be both broken and manipulated with a gravity gun, properties that wouldn't be immediately apparent about a metal bar.
We're really happy with the Zombine's grenade behavior. It adds sudden danger spikes to the zombie horde, which force players to quickly reprioritize the targets. And since the player can grab a grenade out of the Zombine's end with a gravity gun, these danger spikes can be converted into offensive opportunities. This kind of turnaround skill shot creates some dynamic, satisfying hero moments for the player. Originally, we didn't allow the player to snatch Zombine grenades because it barely broke the friction of the gravity gun. If players could grab a Zombine grenade, why couldn't they grab the Combine Soldier's gun? After playtesting the grenade still though, fun went out of it.
It's still light out. Thank God, it's still day. Let's get out of here. Oh God, no! No, it's locked! I can't believe this. Hey, up there! Hello? Can you let us out of here? Hello? They can't hear us. That's it. See if the crank still works. Come on, Gordon, crank that thing. Great. Okay, let's get to the train yard before the Citadel blows.
This City 17 vista is an explicit visual reward for surviving the elevator battle. Since early playtesters told us that we weren't communicating just how damaged the city was, this sweeping view of an extremely messed up City 17 serves a practical purpose, as well as being a nice moment of calm between storms. The framing of your first view of the Citadel in this vista space is very deliberate. We included various leading elements, such as wires and light poles, that all drive the player's eye to the Citadel.
One thing we try to do when we're integrating storytelling and gameplay, something that's become a hallmark of ours, is to include non-linear bits of narrative, things that action-oriented players don't have to sit through, but that are available to players who want to learn more about the background of the story. Kleiner's broadcasts on the public address monitors are a good example of this method. Apart from the strong visual image of Dr. Kleiner replacing his former boss on the giant screens, his speech conveys a lot of dense information about the state of the world and how things have changed due to the events of Half-Life 2. We settled on this particular location for the Kleiner cast as one of the few logical places where players can watch in peace or move on to the next encounter. It's essentially a footnote embedded in the world, which makes this a footnote on a footnote.
Later in the level, there's a Combine gunner protected behind some metal plates, just like the ones blocking the player's way here. We placed them here as a training tool to remind players that the gravity gun can grab and attach these.
They're looking for something. Probably us.
Repelling soldiers presented a difficult training problem because we found it's tough to focus the player's attention upward. This entire alley was carefully designed to ensure that the player would see the descending soldiers. First, we framed the soldiers with a straight line of buildings. Then we had them run across the rooftops so they were starkly silhouetted against the sky before they dropped down in front of the lightly colored buildings. Finally, we added a distinctive sound to the repelling action so that the players would recognize it later in the game.
I was hoping it would be a bit farther before they noticed us again.
Character AI is all about putting on a good show. As we neared the end of production, we were still unhappy with the way that Alex handled herself in combat. The most common thing she did was run backwards while shooting at the enemies. It was fairly realistic, but kind of boring. So we added crouching and aiming at the last minute, and though it didn't really change her combat effectiveness in any functional way, it made her a whole lot more fun to watch. And this is a really good example of how these relatively minor presentation and behavior changes can often have a really major impact on entertainment value.
The post-Half-Life 2 look of City 17 was difficult to nail down, and we went through many changes. We wanted to establish several things, primarily that this was a different part of the same city with a slightly different atmosphere, and that it had been severely damaged. This street was a test bed for a lot of our visual design work. First, we built an intact city street, then we beat up certain buildings, in some cases removing them entirely so that more destruction was visible in the distance. We did an initial lighting pass in the game engine and then took screenshots of various locations. Using Photoshop, we manipulated those screenshots to establish a color scheme. Photoshop lets us quickly iterate through all kinds of skies, lighting styles, and color schemes. The environmental lighting colors that we ended up with were based on some photo references of the sun filtering through smoke from a forest fire. Some falling ash effects and a closer than usual fog plane helped sell the effect.
Trip mine traps are great, but they were sort of hard to justify given the total chaos of Citadel. Even though we couldn't use trip mines a lot, they made sense in this interrupted ambush scene.
Nicely done. Let's head upstairs.
This explosion permanently seals the cafe door, which has a few benefits. From a design perspective, we found that when we limit the amount of backtracking players can do, it gives them confidence in moving forward. And from a practical standpoint, we can clean up the now unreachable entities, giving us a big reduction in overhead. It also helps to minimize potential bugs and exploits.
Bring that over here and I'll rejigger it. Hold on a second. We can't get through here while that sniper's covering the street.
Originally, the player didn't get any weapons until the end of this map, so roller mines were the only way to kill the soldiers. As we added more content to previous levels, it became impractical for players to be without a gun for so long. As a result, players get weapons much earlier now.
Nice toss, Gordon. That sniper almost took my head off. Let me climb up and take a look at what we're walking into. They've got the street fortified up ahead. You run point, okay? I'll cover you from up here till you reach the far end. When the coast is clear, I'll catch up. Okay, looks like I can get that ladder down to you. Let me shoot out the latch. I might be a little rusty with this rifle. Ha! Nope, guess I'm not.
One of the primary design goals of Episode 1 was to convey the sense that Alex and the player are a team. This sniper sequence provides an opportunity for Alex to offer combat support in a cool new way. It also gives the player a chance to watch zombies get sniped up close and from various angles.
Players didn't have any weapons in the original version of this map. That made it a lot more important to remove the boards with the gravity gun so that Alex could snipe the zombies. Once weapons were added though, the sky bridge became less of a puzzle and more of a straightforward combat event. We added more zombies to increase the challenge, but pulling the boards off is still the most fun way to get through this section.
Glad that's over. Oh, God. Looks like the reactor's back on track for a meltdown. That transmission's going out after all. Oh! I'd like to find another way around these buildings, but we really don't have time. Okay, let's get in. Come on.
Our AI is inherently unscripted, which means that we have to design spaces that permit our characters to make good choices. The AI is better able to make intelligent decisions when there are alternate routes through a combat space. This hallway started out as a straight-shot corridor with a door at the end for soldiers to enter through, but this design didn't provide the AI with enough choices to make the soldier behavior very interesting. Adding an additional space on the side allowed them to find cover and flank the player, both of which dramatically improved the entertainment value.
The first prototype of Episode 1's door blast effect was here in the Combine garrison. Being peppered with chunks of wood while soldiers poured into the room through a haze of smoke proved to be an effective dramatic tool. It was also an excellent way to simultaneously ungate the player and flood the area with enemies. It was so unanimously successful in playtests that we ended up adding it in several places throughout the episode.
At this point in the action, we really felt that we needed a combat crescendo. Antlion guards make great boss challenges, and we decided to add some Combine forces to the mix because watching AI characters fight each other is always entertaining. This setup had a few other benefits as well. Since players had previously only fought alone against the guards, this was the first time they'd actually witnessed secondhand the effects of a guard headbutt. They'd also seen APC in action, and in case there was any doubt, get definite proof that Combine soldiers and Antlion guards don't get along, underscoring the collapse of Combine dominance in City 17.
Antlion Guard arenas have a few specific design requirements. For instance, since the guard is only armed with a melee attack, we can't let the player reach any place that's inaccessible to the guard, such as rooftops and other high perches that the player can only arrive at after being launched by a guard headbutt. The arenas also need plenty of physics objects for the guard to toss, and at least one unlimited ammo crate, so that the player can't run out of ammunition before killing the guard. For this battle, we also introduced a steady stream of regular Antlions to limit the player's ability to constantly circle the Antlion guard.
In early versions of this area, there was no side passage off the street, and a gash in the road was created by the gunship that the player later fights in the hospital attic. As development progressed, however, gameplay, story, and performance requirements made this initial design unworkable. The new side passage provided a short break in the combat tension after the boss battle, and also helped us stay within our performance budget.
After the Antlion Guard fight, playtesters were reporting some combat fatigue. We decided to include an environmental puzzle here to break up the pacing before the subsequent street battle. We originally worried that a densely packed room full of hopper mines, strip mines, and explosive barrels was a little too implausible, but playtesters loved it. After the Antlion Guard fight, playtesters were reporting some combat fatigue. We decided to include an environmental puzzle here to break up the pacing before the subsequent street battle. We originally After the Antlion Guard fight, playtesters were reporting some combat fatigue. We decided to include an environmental puzzle here to break up the pacing before the subsequent street battle. We originally worried that a densely packed room full of hopper mines, trip mines, and explosive barrels was a little too implausible, but playtesters loved the sudden reveal of the room and then enjoyed navigating it, so this ended up being another case where we accepted a trade-off between fun. At one point, this was the site of a physically simulated elevator puzzle. It was kind of neat, but it caused a lot of problems in playtests. Even though the puzzle mostly obeyed the laws of physics, it wasn't all in line with the way we had trained players to expect elevators to work in our world. We considered adding some earlier training to support it, but quickly abandoned the idea in favor of a redesign that was more immediately understandable while still being fun.
There you are. I thought you might have forgotten about me. Uh-oh. Here we go again. here. Everyone should clear out of the city.
The Combine's not making it easy. We're trying to get enough people together to force our way through to the train station. People are meeting up in a safe house nearby.
Can you take us there?
You bet. Let's go. This way. Hey, it's me. Open the door.
What's the password?
I'm not even gonna tell you to shut up.
Come on in.
Previously, certain protein chains